Are the Steelers defense running a new defense this year? That's what it sounds like when we talk to guys in the locker room, despite them having the same defensive coordinator. I'm Chris Carter. This is the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll talk about that with Nick Farabaugh. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the app. We'll have more on FanDuel later. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Nick Farabaugh from PennLive.com. You know him, you love him. He's the Steelers beat reporter over there. Nick, you and I got in the Steelers locker room Monday. It was a chatty locker room, and I think even more so than the Jets win. Sometimes after a loss, they're very quiet, but there was a lot of chatter, and not just about, oh man, we're happy we won, but about, hey, we have a lot to clean up. And that was something that we gathered, especially on the defensive side of the ball, even with their 5 turnover game.
Yeah, it was weird when I went in the locker room, like after the immediate game after in Foxborough. It was like it didn't feel like a win, right? It didn't feel like a loss, but it felt like, yeah, this is a win that we know we could have played better, and we should have won by more with 5 turnovers, right? Like, I think that's the feeling. And it's interesting. I think there's a lot of optimism in certain areas, and then there's others where the guys are like, right, that obviously needs work, right? Like the run defense against running backs, way better this week. But then again, the third down struggles and some of the pass defense struggles, those popped up. You love the opportunistic defense, but there's like a give and a take, right? Same with the offense. Like, in terms of down-to-down success, wasn't necessarily there. But the red zone offense and the short yardage, really good. Like, there's a lot of positives, and then there's a negative offset. And that's kind of what it felt like. And so I think this team is trying to kind of round itself into form and learn while winning. And that's always a good thing if you can do it. If you can win while you're not playing at 100%, and then you can get up to your A game and start to really kind of kick it into high gear, that's a different story. And that gets you up the playoff rankings fairly quickly if you can do that.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely what's happening on defense right now. You and I have talked about this off camera, but when we argue with Steelers fans who say this is just the same defense, they're just doing the same things, they're trying to do anything new, you're not watching tape if you're saying that. They're trying different blitzes, different run fits, different coverages, different mixes up with blitzes and coverages. And a lot of that's because of the new personnel that they've switched in, guys like Jalen Ramsey, guys like Darius Slay. Even now you're getting guys like Julius Peppers, Chuck Clark, Juan Thornhill. There's so many new pieces to this defense, but with that, it's taking some time for them to adjust to a lot of the things, even for guys who were on the team last year, like Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, as far as doing something that they're used to, they're supposed to do in this defense, and also meshing that with things that they did well and earlier in their careers. A defensive coordinator like Terrell Austin, your job is to incorporate not just the schematics that you want, but incorporate those schematics in a way that favor the skills and talents of players as individuals. But it's also very difficult when you have guys that have wide-ranging skill sets that to mesh those sometimes. The best defensive coordinators, they are able to put it together, but it takes time to do that, Nick. And I think that's been a part of the Steelers' challenge as far as putting together a complete defensive performance early on this season.
Yeah, the new blitzes are different. The fronts they're doing disguises up front. Peyton Wilson talked about that. They were able to kind of get into the cat and mouse game in training camp with Rodgers, but trying to kind of feel it out in game and actually communicate with one another is totally different in a live field. And this was another thing. I talked with Jalen Ramsey after the game in Foxborough, and I was like, because they were moving around more on the back end, right? They were showing cover 1 and then they were going into cover 2, or they were doing vice versa, whatever. And so they were rotating more, whereas the first week they kind of just stood there and played their usual stuff. They played cover 3. If it was quarters, they were going to play quarters. It wasn't a lot of movement pre-snap. But this week they were like moving around a lot. And Jalen said, with veterans like him and Jabril Peppers and Chuck Clark, they're kind of able to do that. That's not necessarily a coaching point. It's more so like, hey, the players, we trust the players, have the freedom, move around as much as you want. Try to confuse these quarterbacks and make them think. And so some of that is also these players trying to pick up on each other's body language. This is what you like to do. This is what I like to do. How do we mesh those together? I mean, Jabril Peppers literally just got here 10 days ago, if even. So there's a lot of different things working in there. granted, I think the communication could be more fluid, but I do think we mentioned it will take time. I do think there are indicators that there could be upside to this defense. And I mean, they're really good in early downs last week. They got the Patriots into a ton of third and longs. They got the Seahawks into a ton of third and longs. I think the next step is how do you figure out the third and long defense? I think that's going to be the big thing. And how do they kind of play that off to get off the field in those situations?
We both mentioned our conversations with Peyton Wilson. Here is our back and forth with Peyton Wilson, where you're going to hear me and Nick ask a lot of these questions. So take a look to Inside the Steelers locker room back on Monday when we talk to Steelers linebacker Peyton Wilson.
You kind of picked up on what might be the issue on those third and longs for you guys. Is it communication? Is it kind of details and zones? What do you guys kind of feel?
The way we play, we just all have to be on the line. You know, we play when we're in our zone coverages. When the quarterback's looking one way, we have to be melting, and we all have to be on the line. I mean, they made some pretty good plays in New England on third and long, but just continuing to be tighter in our zones and understanding that, I mean, if it's 3rd and 14, the receiver's going to stop at 13 yards. So you might want to be there, but just continuing to work it, kind of like in the run game, just continuing to work it and get better at it, be the same way there.
When I talk to people about this defense, some people tell me like, oh, it's the same defense they did last year. Nothing's changing. But when I watch you guys, I see like more twists, more stunts, things come a different direction. Would you say that you guys are being a bit more aggressive this year and you guys are learning how to play that way?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because, you know, you have the talent we have in here is surreal. Everybody knows that. But just not only that, but those guys are bringing stuff from other places, right? You know, your twists, your games up front, your blitzes, just how creative defensive coordinators have gotten all over the league, and some guys being able to bring stuff in. It's been really cool. And I think that's kind of why you see a lot like Jack's sack last week. He was nobody even touched him. You know, I think we're doing a lot of different things, trying to switch it up. Instead of it just being the same old, we're in our gaps, we're playing what we play and try to out-execute us. You know, it's just switch it up, get some guys home. Obviously, TJ gets chipped every single play, so trying to do some things to allow him to get a one-on-one every now and again. So just, definitely switching some things up.
What's the challenge to mesh the front with the back end when you guys are doing that? Because, like, you know, if the front's sending a certain blitz and, like, you know, say one person just tried to do something that they're used to in coverage, sometimes that can compromise things. But that's a lot of things to have to consider.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to being assignment sound. Obviously, every week, I mean, this is the highest level of football. Your game plans are going to change, your playbooks are going to change. So just studying the film and knowing your assignment, I think, just comes down to assignment football. And you know, I think they kind of work hand in hand. You get a guy free like Jack, even if he doesn't make the sack, there's pressure. You get a pick like B, got this past week with the pressure, so it just works hand in hand.
What happened on the second touchdown? Because it looked like someone was supposed to run with Hunter up the middle, but like it wasn't sure like who was supposed to do that.
Yeah, we just got in we were in like a man alignment zone execution, and when they motioned, we just got off our count. We just got to continue to be on our count and recount, and I mean, that was a gimme. You know, it should have been 14-7, and we should have been all right. But I mean, things like that happen, and you don't want them to. But I mean, obviously, if it just goes back to communication. If we're screaming, over communicating, some things like that don't happen. But just continuing to communicate, no matter what the call is, understand the responsibility.
One word that he used in that back and forth was creative. And that's the thing. I do think the Steelers defense by design is creative. The problem hasn't been that. The problem has been fitting together the things while being creative to still cover up the basics and take away the things that offenses are trying to do. That's the challenge, is matching that creativity, matching those designs with what they need to do week to week to take away things that offenses want to attack.
100%. And like talking about showing man, but actually being in zone, that's a part of it. You got to be on the count. You got to make sure, especially when you're in those bunch stacks, you pass it off correctly. The Steelers, for example, did execute their Yankee calls this week correctly. If you saw it on the film, they ran it twice. They executed them correctly. So there are different things that they're going to do this year that I think are going to mix things up. The Steelers, by the way, I'm not sure if you have noticed, are playing quarters at a higher rate than they did last year, way higher rate. I think it's 20%. They ran it like 5% of the time last year. So they're mixing in different things, different coverages. So quarterbacks have to slow it down a little bit. And that can be a big gain for them on the back end of their schedule when they have Jordan Love, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Josh Allen, all these great players that they're going to end up facing.
Jake Browning. Anyways, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about this red zone offense, because right now they're the second best red zone offense in the NFL percentage wise. Is that a real or is that a mirage? We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more simply than move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover USV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, they sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh from PennLive.com talking about the Steelers. Let's talk about this red zone offense. Through 2 weeks, Nick, the Steelers have the second best red zone offense in the NFL, second only to the Philadelphia Eagles, who have scored on every red zone possession that they've had this year, which is insane. But the Steelers right now have scored on 87.5% of their red zone possessions, and that's way up from 48.21% last year that they had in the red zone when it came to touchdowns. And a lot of this has been Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers right now, as far as red zone passing, is tied with Jared Goff for the most red zone touchdowns in the NFL, 6 touchdowns and 1 interception for each of them. Of course, Aaron Rodgers' interception was the Calvin Austin tip pass for Pat Freiermuth. But the question I have for you, Nick, is this something you think the Steelers will be able to rely upon? Not necessarily the specific percentage, but just being an efficient red zone offense this year? Or is this a mirage that has just kind of been because of the early football schedule they had?
This is the one thing I'm confident about with the offense. I think they will be a really good red zone group. That is a Rodgers staple. He's usually very good in the red zone. More importantly, they just have the right guys to be good at it with. Think about all the tight end talent they have with Jonnu, Pat, and Darnell. I mean, all 3 of those guys are big red zone weapons. DK Metcalf is a big-time red zone weapon. They have just a lot of size and an ability to impose in short yardage. And I think that's been the thing also, Chris, is their short yardage offense on top of this has been really good. When they've gotten into 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s, they've been able to kind of run the ball for 3 or 4 yards and just get the first. I think that's been a new thing too. Remember how many times we kind of complained about short yardage offense over the past few years? They've been really good in the short yardage offense part of this. So I think it's going to be something they can rely upon. They do have the offensive line. I know the O-line has kind of struggled in the gel right now, but one thing they do have as an offensive line is I do think they have kind of a lot of power behind what kind of their initial surge, which I think is something to note. So when you're kind of running those usual like inside zone duo stuff where you're just kind of going right up the middle, you can usually do that. And then Arthur Smith, I think, loves to get creative. I mean, you've got pop passes to Jonnu. You got fake jets to Jonnu that pitch out to Kenny Gainwell. Like, there's a lot of different things they can do in the red zone. And so I do think they'll be a pretty good red zone offense this year. They have a lot of different things to utilize in that area of the field that can really make defenses uncomfortable. So I think they will be a really good red zone offense all year.
To your point about short yardage success, right now they are 62.5% on gaining 3rd and 4th downs when they are just 1 or 2 yards out. That's tied for, I believe, 8th in the NFL right now, which is pretty good. And that had been something that had been in their way. And also sometimes when you have an older quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, that can be the thing that hurts you, because you can't quarterback. You don't want a quarterback sneak with him, because all it takes is one bad pop, and then all of a sudden your 41-year-old quarterback is not going to be healthy anymore. So I agree with you. This is something that size-wise makes a lot of sense. And I still think they're just tapping into it. Like you went back to that red zone possession where Kenneth Gainwell scored the touchdown, but it was set up by that 3rd down when they didn't get the run to work on the first 2 plays. And then what did Aaron Rodgers do? As soon as they came out in 3rd down, I saw Darnell Washington split out wide, and I was like, well, he's going there. And so he threw it. It ended up being defensive pass interference. It reset the downs. Then Kenneth Gainwell was able to go get his touchdown eventually there. I think they're still just scratching the surface when it comes to Darnell Washington, DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, and Jonnu Smith, all being bigger body guys with strong hands that can go up and get the football against smaller defensive backs. And eventually, I think they're going to be in a position where they're going to force defenses. Like, I think an ideal like red zone inside the 5 situation is you bring out 2 receivers, or no, 3 tight ends, a receiver, and a running back. You do DK Metcalf, all 3 of your tight ends, Freiermuth, Smith, and Washington, and then you put Warren in the backfield, but you spread the tight ends out. And so now you're forcing these defenders to work in space in their one-on-ones against those guys. And then also on the interior, you're stressing the communication and the efforts of the D line and the inside linebackers to contain the run, because all it takes is one little slip up and then Jaylen Warren just bursts through the right hole and he's in the end zone. I think that can be a prime weapon all season for the Steelers, that if they can figure out the offense to get into the red zone, that'll make them one of the better offenses in the NFL if they can do those things.
Right. They are going to convert, I think, at a high level there, if they can get inside the 10, especially. And the thing they also have, and that we haven't really mentioned, is the fact that Warren is just such a tank, the kind of churns his legs and gets hidden yards. I think that's the other thing is Warren, even when it's not perfectly blocked up, is a guy that really does do well creating hidden yards. So they have another weapon there, and they can get him utilized out in the flat. And I think that's the other thing is you kind of have to, they've used a lot of motion down in the red zone, and you kind of have to keep an eye on Jalen and Calvin Austin, who are like the quicker little guys, from just getting free from you too, while you're kind of defending these big dudes. So it's a good problem to have for the Steelers. I think they're going to be a really good red zone offense. It's going to be, can they consistently move it down the field to get there?
To your point, Jaylen Warren right now is charted by Pro Football Focus to have 14 missed tackles forced. That is third best in the NFL behind Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor. That's pretty good company to be keeping if you're Jaylen Warren. That's why I've been giving him good grades for the Steelers. Looking at the offense, if you had told me, and Alan Saunders kind of said this on yesterday's episode, you had told me that through 3 weeks that they were the 13th best scoring offense in the NFL, I would have said you're crazy. Actually, they're the 12th best. They're tied with the Buccaneers right now. But I do think that this offense can hover around this range. I still don't think this is going to end up being a top 10 offense. I still think that they're going to be a bit behind that. But this was the sweet spot that I thought they could attain if they did the right things, if the offensive line continued to grow, if Aaron Rodgers fit in with this team, was hovered just outside that top 10 range. And you do that, and this defense picks itself up, and it becomes a top 10 unit again. And you hope that eventually they can get to a top 5 unit by the end of the year. That's the stuff that can make you a more dangerous teams against the good teams later down in their schedule.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing they do have to do, I think, outside of the red zone is we got to see a downfield passing attack. Here comes around a lot of quick game, a lot of screens right now, a lot of dumps to Jalen. These teams are going to start creeping up. If they don't start pushing the ball on the field a little more, it's going to be very much 2021 Big Ben offense. So we need to see that improve a little bit. So we'll see if they can kind of get that going. I would like to see a more dynamic set of play action passes rather than just the bootleg game. I'd like to see a straight drop, a kind of drop back play action game. I understand the O-line is a question and everything, but I think at some point you kind of have to take a risk and see if you can develop that part of the game. So we'll see if they can get there. But right now, when they do get in the red zone, I feel very confident they're usually going to get in there. They have a nice set of weapons to use on the chessboard when they get there.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about this defensive line specifically because Derrick Harmon was back, and I thought he had a solid first game in the NFL, but Keanu Benton still struggled. We covered that in our grades, but I want to talk with Nick about a plan for this defensive line moving forward. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, remind you, the show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for every week with this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet players' props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game even more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get your chance at $300 in bonus bets only on FanDuel. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh. Nick saw Derrick Harmon come in, play. I thought he did. He helped well. I think he kind of showed that if he can be healthy, if he is in football shape and ready to go, he should be a starter of this defensive line. He helped against the run. He got his first sack in the NFL in his first game. I thought Dan Aquale acquitted himself well in the middle of the defense. Should the Steelers' defensive front right now be Cam Heyward, Derrick Harmon and Dan Aquale with guys like Benton and Black filling in behind them.
That's kind of what I would like to see, at least early downs. I'm not sure the pass rush juice is necessarily there with Ekawale right now, but I do think what he brings is a really stout kind of player in the middle of that defense. He's two-gapping, man. He's doing the old school stuff. I think that's really fun. He's strong. He's able to take on combos and keep guys free. If you saw him on the field, I think there were 2 separate times he took up a combo and Patrick Queen came in right behind him and made a tackle. That's the stuff you love to see. Is PQ playing fast and free, and Ekawale eating it like a nose tackle should. I think on late downs, I still want to see Benton in there more. And I think right now with Keanu, less is more. I really do. I think, reset the mindset and then ramp it back up as he continues to play right now. I think there's a little bit of kind of tentativeness right now for him, and he's trying to kind of figure some things out. He's trying to kind of put new pass rush moves in and find a new way to evolve his game. So we'll see how that goes. But Ekawale is playing really well. In fact, I think Ekawale was extremely good at only 17 snaps. Harmon, meanwhile, dude, this guy collapsed the pocket at least 6 times against the Patriots. He's super strong. He did not get moved off his spot in the run game. He can take on combos. He's got great length. I think my favorite play of his day isn't even that, though. It's the hot motor. It's the screenplay to Travion Henderson where he comes from behind and hawks the dude down on a screen. It's so Cam Heyward-ish in that way. I really like Derrick Harmon. He played very, very well. I think there are still some details, but it was his NFL debut. He played extremely well. So I think for right now, if you have those 3 starting, and then you have Benton kind of as a sub-package rusher type, and then Black kind of mixing as you see fit, I think it could be a really good defensive line.
I think it can be. I think there's potential there. And this is, again, why I think that Steelers fans should be more optimistic about where this team is right now. Not that they're not with the 2-1 record. I still think this week's going to be a challenge, but there's a lot of potential for this team to achieve upside and find more upside in their play in these coming weeks and these coming months here in the NFL. And the defensive line's part of that. Yes, Keanu Benton has not played well. I think the less is more part on your part is a good thing. Maybe shoring up some things, making him focus on specific assignments. Maybe that helps light a fire in him or lets something click. Maybe it also lets his elbow rest a little bit because he's been grabbing that a lot and he's been wearing this elbow pad. But to me, that's the biggest challenge for the Steelers right now. This team's supposed to be good up in the trenches. The offensive line, I think, has made slow but steady progress through 3 weeks. They've been getting slightly better. They're still not where you want them to be, but the defensive line, they're figuring things out. If by mid-November these units are playing considerably better, and you see the progression of Aaron Rodgers with the chemistry of the offense, the progression with the defensive chemistry that we were just talking about, those are the things that can make you a very strong team in the tighter months, because then all of a sudden you're winning in the trenches. You can trust the run game more. You can trust stuffing the run more. You can trust getting pass rushes, even with 4 guys, not having to send heat all the time. Those are the things that can make you more dangerous, and teams won't be able to just tee off on it as much because wouldn't have been the strengths of the Steelers leading up to those games. So I think this defensive line is a big part of what needs to improve this season if the Steelers are going to become serious contenders at some point.
Right, and I do think the Steelers have options, and I liked what they did at linebacker last week, but by kind of splitting Cole Holcomb and Peyton Wilson up into situations that they would kind of feel better in. I think you need to do the same thing at nose. I do. I think splitting those snaps up between Ekawale and Benton, and then maybe eventually when he feels more comfortable, maybe put Y.A. Black in there and you start throwing Benton a little bit more out at 4-eye. I think that maybe is something that can evolve over the season. I'd like the idea of that. I think they're a decent deep D-line. I just think it's kind of figuring out the right way to go about it and kind of fitting the personnel in. I also really liked an adjustment they made. They were sending a lot more blitzes on rundowns this week. And they were kind of allowing PQ and Cole and in Keanu too. Ben made a few nice plays against the run this week because they just kind of said, you know what? Just go, shoot upfield and go. And that's what happened. So they were able to kind of hit some TFLs and some really short yardage gains there as well. So I think there's a lot of different things they're figuring out against the run and on these early down plays. But the D-line is going to be really, really big. But I do think right now in terms of consistency and performance, their top 3 guys have been Cam, Ekawale, and Harmon. And I think Benton and Black can fit into that rotation really well to kind of strengthen it over the season.
He's Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. There's Steelers beat writer. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Farabaugh FB, Blue Sky Nick Farabaugh. Make sure to check out the Steelers Breakdown podcast and the Steelers stuff at PennLive.com/Steelers.
He's Nick Farabaugh. Thank you, Nick. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, everywhere you get social media at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com, including my film study and my grades that are up this week. Also, check me out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow with Crossover Thursday with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.